श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की
जय।
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। आचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिव गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपाल गोपीनाथ श्याम राधा कुंज गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन की जय। राधिका की जय। जगन्नाथ प्रियम की जय। पद्मिनी की जय। तुलसी की जय। यमुनामयी की जय। गंगामयी की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। All voices, so devoted. All voices, so devoted. All voices, so devoted. All voices, so devoted.
Anam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishnu Vishnu Bhakti Vikasa Swami Namo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the 10th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Opulence of the Absolute. And I believe we're doing text numbers 4 to 14. So I would like to thank all of the assembled Vaishnava devotees of the Lord and His Holiness Dhanavir Goswami Maharaj for allowing us to come here and blessing me with the opportunity to hopefully speak something which is in line and pleasing to all the devotees. So I apologize. This is my first time doing this sort of program, but do we chant the whole verse together and then, or is it like call and response or? And then we just go straight through 14 and then we can speak something there. Sure. Buddhir Jnanamasammoham Kshama Satyam Dhamma Shama Sukam Dukam Bhavo Bhavo Bhayam Cha Bhayameva Cha Ahimsa Samata Tushti Stapo Dhanam Yasho Yashaha Bhavanti Bhava Bhutana Mateva Pratag Vidhaha. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, self-control, calmness, pleasure and pain, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame and infamy are created by me alone. Vaharshaya saptapurve chatvaro manavastata madbhava manasa jata yesham loka imaf prajaha. The seven great sages, and before them the four other great sages, and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, are born out of my mind, and all creatures in these planets descend from them. Etam vibhutim yogam cha mam yo veti tattvataha so vikalpena yogena yujate natra samshayaha. He who knows in truth this glory and power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. Machita madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening one another and conversing about me. Desham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Desham evanukam partam aham ajnanajam tama nasayam yadma bhavasto jnana deepena bhasvata. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Arjuna uvacha param brahma param dhamma pavitram paramam bhavan purusham shashvatam divyam adidevam ajam vibhum ahustvam rishaya sarve devarshir naradastata astito devalo vyasa swayam chaiva bravaisime. Arjuna said, "You are the supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode, the purifier, the absolute truth, and the eternal divine person. You are the primeval God, transcendental and original. You are the unborn and all-pervading beauty. All the great sages, such as Narada, Ashita, Devala, and Vyasa, proclaim this of you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me." Sarvam etadritam manye yanmam vadasi keshava nahite bhagavan vyaktim vidur deva nadanavaha. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the gods nor demons, O Lord, know thy personally. Mm. Of course, all chapters of Bhagavad Gita are all very important, but this chapter here is one of the most important chapters of Bhagavad Gita because we really see Lord Krishna, who from the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, we hear Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, but we see throughout the different Vedic literatures when a lot of great personalities speak, you hear this phrase, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. But it's very specific here in Bhagavad Gita because Krishna is making a very specific claim where he is not only claiming but showing himself to be the supreme personality of Godhead himself. And this process of Buddhi Yoga, he isn't just declaring that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that we should accept it. Why? Because he says so. But he's about to show Arjuna and describe to Arjuna all of his opulences. And after showing Arjuna all of these wonderful things and describing to him how everything he sees in this material world is coming from him, he says, this is just a small spark of my splendor. So this process of Buddhi Yoga, which Lord Krishna is describing, is how we can actually come to realize this ourselves. We can see Arjuna has accepted it as thus, and Krishna even says in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter, there's this verse, Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasya me tarutamam, that Bhaktosi me, that he is Krishna's very dear devotee, but he is also sakha cheti. He's Krishna's very, very dear friend. So Arjuna, he's been able to understand Krishna by this process of Buddhi Yoga. And we can see that this process of Buddhi Yoga, it isn't just some sectarian practice. It isn't just some other religion, but it's actually the highest level of God realization. We can see in this first text here, Krishna describes how so many different qualities, they all come from him. In different religious understandings, we hear that only the good things come from God and that the bad things, they must come from somewhere else, because everything about God has to be purely good, and anything not good must have been created by something else. We see in Christianity, they have this idea of Satan, where he's like almost as powerful as God, not like exactly the same. God is like a little more powerful, and they're having like a fight. And sometimes it's like Satan's winning, sometimes it's like God is winning. They have a very strange idea, but it's because their process of yoga, their process of understanding, it isn't this Buddhi Yoga. It isn't this highest level of yoga. Yoga itself means to link with the Supreme. And this Buddhi Yoga is the highest way which we can come to that realization, where we see that these seemingly contradictory things, where we have intelligence, knowledge, forgiveness, truthfulness, but also pleasure and pain, birth and death, fear and fearlessness. All these things, they're coming from Krishna. They're coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And why is this? It's because Krishna is absolute. Everything about him is completely pure. And we see even in the highest platform in the spiritual world, even some form of pain or distress, it's actually the highest level of pleasure. We can't really conceive of this in our current world of dualities, in our current material world. But that's why after this, Krishna explains, I believe it's in the 15th chapter, where he describes this material world as a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, where the spiritual world, it's like a beautiful banyan tree. And then when you see in the reflection of the water, it's like the banyan tree is upside down. So all of these qualities coming from Krishna, they're all completely pure. But when they become contaminated by these three modes of material nature, which Krishna will also describe later on in the 13th chapter, then we find this world of dualities which we live in, this happiness and distress, heat and cold, that Krishna describes in the second chapter. And we should have no doubt that all these things, they're coming from Krishna, that Krishna is the source of everything. And that's one of the most famous verses in Bhagavad Gita, this Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, that Krishna, Aham, I, Sarvasya, Prabhava, he's the source of everything. And that everything emanates from him. And he describes this very important concept of that those who perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts, these are the people that are actually able to realize this, right? This buddhi yoga, it isn't just a speculative process of knowledge. It isn't just, you pass a couple exams and you become self-realized, but it's really realized by engaging in devotional service. And one doesn't even have to be very learned. One doesn't even have to be literate. We hear about this story in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita of the man who's reading Bhagavad Gita, but he's holding it upside down, right? And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes to him and he's like, "Sir, what are you doing?" And he's like, my spiritual master, my guru, he gave me the instruction to read Bhagavad Gita, but I can't read it, but just sitting here meditating on how Krishna became the charioteer for Arjuna, I'm just feeling in so much ecstasy. And he was crying. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that this man has realized the meaning of Bhagavad Gita because he wasn't engaging in any sort of mundane speculative jnana or any mundane yoga practice, but he was engaged in devotional service. And Krishna rewarded him with this intelligence. He says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayantite. Those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. And we see this recognized by all of our great Vaishnava acharyas, right? There's this story of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where some of his great and learned disciples, they came to him with some questions. And they were like, Maharaj, we want to ask you these high-level questions that we have. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, there's one gardener. He's working outside. You go and you ask him. And they went to this gardener. And he was just doing some simple service. Nothing, just maintaining the garden for Krishna. But he was fully absorbed. He was fully engaged in this devotional service. And they went to this gardener and they were like, how is this person going to tell me anything? But when they went to this gardener, his first thought was, how can I engage these people in devotional service? So he offered to have them help him in the garden. And I believe the story goes that they were reluctant for some time, but after engaging in this devotional service, the answers, they naturally came to them. And they went back to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And they were like, now I see that this man, he knows so much. We also see, we just recently had the, was it appearance or disappearance day of Jayananda Thakur? Yeah, we recently celebrated the disappearance day of Jayananda Thakur, who wasn't necessarily the most learned. We were hearing in Atlanta, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, he gave a lecture on the life of Jayananda Thakur. And he was saying that there was some Bhagavad Gita classes that he was giving where he would even be falling asleep while he was giving the class. Why? Not because he was in the mode of ignorance or because he didn't understand, but because he was engaging so much in Krishna's service that he didn't really even have time to sleep. And his main mood was to engage others in Krishna's service. And because of that, people became so inspired just by his association. He didn't have to preach some high philosophy to people, but just by his example, his character, and his actions, people would be so inspired. And he had this ability to just engage anybody in Krishna's service. there was one incident where there was one man, he was just walking by, and one of the main services that Jayananda Thakur had was he would build this Ratha Yatra cart um, every year for all these different temples. And he was like, "Hey man, can you come and help me hammer in this nail? It'll just take like a couple seconds. I just like need your help for just like a minute or so." And then he like hammered in the nail, and he was like, "Whoa, you're really good at this, man. You must be like a professional or something. Can you like do like this one too?" And then he did another one, and Jayananda Thakur was like, "Whoa, this is amazing. You must be expert. Like, did you get trained in this?" And he was like, "No, I mean, this is like one of my first times doing it." He was like, "Keep on going, keep on going." And he engaged this person for like the whole day in putting nails in this Ratha Yatra cart. Also, there was one 8-year-old boy who was around the area, and he engaged him in painting the Ratha Yatra cart. So we can see this is the true nature of a Vaishnav, or one who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Is they always want to engage everyone else in Krishna service. They aren't simply content with themselves being situated, being Krishna conscious, but they always want to share that with others and engage others. We have in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prahlad Maharaj, he's worrying for everyone else in the whole world, and he doesn't care for his own liberation, his own deliverance, but he just prays for the upliftment of others, and that they can also be engaged in Krishna's service. And we can see that these devotees, they derive great satisfaction and bliss enlightening one another and conversing about me. So Krishna's showing us exactly what we should imbibe and what qualities we should have after engaging in devotional service, where we should never be content, like, okay, I've already talked about Krishna enough today, or I've already chanted enough today, or I've already distributed books for long enough today. That these devotees, they're never satisfied, they're never satiated, they're always wanting more and more, and not for themselves, like, oh, I want to be so advanced, but they, Trinadapi Sunichena Tarore Vasehishuna, they consider themselves the most fallen, right? Das, the servant of everybody else, right? We have here in this material world that everyone wants to be the master of as many people as they can. But in Krishna consciousness, we have the exact opposite, where it's like, how many people can I serve? How many devotees can I help, and how many devotees can I render service to today? And they're always having conversations about Krishna. They're always chanting the holy names together. Like today, we were in the van on our way to Harinam, and Mangadari Prabhu, because he's fully absorbed, he was saying we should chant a bhajan in our free time. And we chanted this Radha Krishna Bol Bol Bolo E Shobai, this very wonderful bhajan. And just, if we imbibe this mood and attitude, there's no question that we'll be Krishna conscious, right? Because Krishna conscious, what does it mean? It isn't something very difficult. It's just being always conscious of Krishna. And how can we do that? By always engaging in Krishna service, by always chanting the holy names, always speaking about Krishna's pastimes, always associating with devotees, right? When you're with devotees, it's just natural that you talk about Krishna. It's like just natural that you can be like, hey, let's like read Krishna book, let's read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, let's have a bhajan. All these things, they just come so naturally. Versus when you're in materialistic society, or you have to go to a job and you're like, hey man, let's like chant a bhajan, right? People are like, what the heck is this guy talking about? He must be crazy, right? But who's really crazy, right? The materialists are thinking we're crazy because we've completely given up material sense gratification. We've given up the luxury life of living like a polished animal. And we've decided to live a life dedicating it to a higher purpose. And they're thinking these people must be crazy. They don't want to drink. They don't want to smoke. They don't want to have sex. They don't want to gamble. They don't even want to eat meat. I mean, what is speaking meat? They don't even want to eat eggs. Like, these people must be crazy. But then they come to our temple. They taste the prasadam. They engage in the kirtan. They read these transcendental literatures. And then they're like, oh, now I see. Why? Because we're getting the higher taste. Krishna consciousness gives us such a higher level of spiritual sense gratification, right? My spiritual master, he has this lecture called Start Your Day with Sense Gratification, where he describes that the highest form of sense gratification in the morning is actually waking up before 4 a.m. and going to Mangalarti and chanting and dancing for the Supreme Lord, right? But the materialists, they have no idea. They have no idea that in the center of Kansas City, there's a spiritual oasis where anybody can come and experience this highest level of spiritual sense gratification. And it might seem like that in the beginning, that, you know, Prabhupada, when he was first starting his preaching movement, there was this slogan where he said, stay high forever. Because in the hippie generation, they had this idea of wanting to be high all the time. So they would take as many drugs as humanly possible so they could try and reach that high. But no matter how many drugs they took, they always had to come down. They always had to have that duality. But Krishna consciousness, because it's completely spiritual, it isn't bound by that duality. It isn't like, you know, I was speaking with this one student that I met over the phone, and before getting Prabhupada's books, he was really interested in this philosophy called Taoism. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it basically says that everything material is like dualistic, meaning it has like happiness and distress. Anything has like its converse, which is true. And we see this in the material world. But then the end of their philosophy is basically like, then nothing we see is actually real. Everything is just nothing, basically, because they don't have any concept of things that are spiritual. And I was really trying to get him to understand this, and he couldn't wrap his mind around it. He was like, so you're saying that you're getting like such a high level of bliss and you don't feel like the opposite reaction for that? You don't like come down from that high? He was like, how is it possible? It's not possible. And I was like, I mean, I can tell you what the taste of honey is like. All I want, I can speak till I'm blue in the face. But until you actually taste it for yourself, you're everything that I'm saying is just going to be completely theoretical. I can speak all I want, telling you about, oh, how my experience is so great and so amazing. You have to experience it for yourself. You have to come. You have to try it out. You have to not only just chant the holy name and read Prabhupada's books, but do it in the association of devotees. In previous yugas, people would go to the caves to meditate. People would isolate themselves from society. But in Kali Yuga, the most important aspect of our spiritual life is actually our association. It's the association of devotees. So we have to do all of these things within devotee association. Otherwise, you know, there's this Kali Yuga, we don't have the intelligence, we don't have the lifespan, we don't have the memory. We're basically the most disqualified people ever to take up to Krishna consciousness. His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj was also giving a class recently in Atlanta where he was talking about fall down from Krishna consciousness. And he was saying how great it was that we had taken to Krishna consciousness, but then he was like saying, don't get puffed up because of this, because he said Lord Chaitanya's mercy is actually for the most fallen people. So actually, because we've taken to Krishna consciousness, shows that we're actually the most fallen people. We're the people who really deserve this great mercy, this great opportunity, the least. But because Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda and all of our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, they're so merciful that they've given us this great gift, especially these wonderful books, right? Prabhupada, it's amazing to think about when you look through the Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you don't know anything about Srila Prabhupada and his life and his story, you might think that this is like the work of a scholar who just like sat in one place and did this for like 50 years. But Srila Prabhupada, within 10 years, he translated and commented on almost the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, while he circumambulated the globe 12 times, opened 108 temples, initiated and personally guided over 5,000 disciples, right? But because our acharyas, they're so merciful, Srila Prabhupada understood that he needed to give us this knowledge. And this is exactly what Krishna says. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born in ignorance. This is exactly our condition. We all have experience of before coming to Krishna consciousness, feeling like we were in a deep dark well and there was no way out. But with this shining lamp of knowledge and coming from these books of Srila Prabhupada, we were able to actually get out of that ignorance, at least speaking for myself, I'm still very much in that darkness born in ignorance. But that's why, we shouldn't just think, like we meet these Hindu people or people born in the great land of India, and they say, oh, I already have Bhagavad Gita, when we try to give it to them. Oh, no, I already have. When we show them the Bhagavatam, they say, no, I already have all 18 of these Bhagavad Gitas. I have this Gita, I have this Gita, I have this Gita, I have all these Bhagavad Gitas. But you ask them to quote a verse, you ask them to explain the meaning of Bhagavad Gita, you ask them if they're reading. Most of them they aren't. And most of them, if they have some meaning of Bhagavad Gita, they say, oh yeah, my favorite shloka is Karmanye Varikadaste Mahapadeshu Gadachana, that you should work like an ass and work so hard and then Krishna will reward you with everything. You're like, that's not what the verse says. It says Karmanye Varikadaste Mahapadeshu Gadachana. Ma karma palahetu mate samgosu karma. That, yeah, you should, at one level, you should work for Krishna, but you shouldn't be attached to any of these fruits. You shouldn't be attached to any of these results. So, yeah, you're working like an ass. But that means you should give me all of your money so I can engage in Krishna service. So you should take these books, you should give a donation, and you should actually read these books that we're giving you. Then you will understand that the goal of life isn't to work like an ass, isn't to live like an animal, but it's to engage in the bliss of Krishna consciousness, right? We go out and we meet so many people on the streets, and
their lives are so miserable, right? People, like we were just in downtown Chicago. People are so miserable. They don't even have like a second of their life to like stop and like talk to you, or even tell you like, hey, like I'm not interested in what you're doing. They're just like go. They don't even have like a second to stop because they feel like if they stop running in the rat race, that they'll fall behind. Or if I waste 1 second, one rat will be further ahead than me, or one goat will be closer to the slaughterhouse than me. And like this, people are running, and there's this example given by our acharyas where there's 2 people that are going for a wedding, and they get in this boat because previously, when people wanted to get from one place to another, one of the quickest ways was to travel by water. So these people, they got in the boat, and the plan was for them to travel throughout the night, so in the morning they would be at their destination. And when the sun came up, naturally they awoke, and they saw we're in the same spot. And they saw the boatman who was there rowing, was rowing. They tapped him on the shoulder. He's like, hey, we're still in the same spot. He's like, oh, I forgot to untie the rope. So he was rowing all night. He was doing so much work, but he wasn't going anywhere. He didn't make any progress or any advancement at all. And this is what we see with these materialistic people, where, okay, you might make $1 million. You might have all of these fancy cars. You might have anything material you could possibly dream of. But you're not going anywhere. Right? This material world is described as samsara, just this cycle, over and over and over again. It's like I forget the Sanskrit, but it's chewing the chew over and over again. Chewing the chew means that, they say I have like a piece of gum, pop them out. Then after I get all the enjoyment that I can get from it, I take it out and I stick it to like the bottom of the desk. Right? We've all been to public school, I assume, so we've all had that experience. And then the next person, they come, they take that gum and they're like, oh, this looks very nice. They also plop in. And when they get all the enjoyment from it, then they put it back. So people, they're constantly chewing what has already been chewed. They're seeing around them, everybody, they're engaging so much in the materialistic way of life. But they're not happy. But I'll be different. Them, they didn't find anything, but I'll be different. I'll be the one who finally makes it in this material world. I'll be the one who has all of this money and can enjoy eternally. And we can see so much money is being spent on how can I live forever? Right? People have this idea that I want to live forever. But Prabhupada would often criticize this, saying you're spending so much money on cancer research, on trying to prolong life, but you aren't spending anything on the science of the soul. You aren't putting any effort into what is actually important. Because one who is actually in knowledge, they understand that all this material stuff is just useless. You can't take any of it with you at the time of death. No matter what sort of agreements you make, no matter how you adjust your finances, or at the time of death, that's it. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Neha vikramasosti pratyavayam vidite salpam apyasya dharmasa drayate mahatovaya. That even a small fraction of advancement on this path of Krishna consciousness, it doesn't go away, and it can free one from even the greatest kind of fear. And Srila Prabhupada describes that this greatest kind of fear, what is it? It's going back down into the animal species. And we can see that this is where everyone's headed. Everyone, they're heading down to the animal species, or worse. Right? We don't even want to think about what's going to happen to some of these people. But that's why we go out and we chant the holy name. We go for Harinam, where even if people don't want anything to do with Krishna consciousness, they can't escape the holy name. They can try as much as they want, but when the devotees are there every day chanting, dancing, the holy name, it'll enter their ears, and it'll enter their mind, it'll enter their consciousness, and that little amount of benefit, it'll be with them forever. They'll always have that connection with the holy name. And this last point here that Arjuna actually makes is that based off the knowledge that Krishna has given him, he understands that Krishna is God, right? So many mundane scholars, they say that, oh yeah, Krishna was some village lord, and that he was able to manipulate a lot of people to follow him, and now it's become some folk legend. But it's directly here in Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna has accepted Krishna as the primal God, as the supreme source of everything. And what's really important is that he doesn't just say, oh, this is my personal realization. But he says, Narada, Asita, Devala, Vyasa, they all have come to this understanding as well. So it isn't just coming from him, but this has been coming down our line of acharyas, and this has been understood by all of the great personalities that Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. Krishna is the source of everything. Everything is coming from him. And if people actually read Bhagavad Gita, they would not have these misconceptions and misunderstandings that, yeah, Krishna is supreme, but also Shiva is supreme, but also Durga is supreme, also anything that I want to be is supreme. Amayamaku and I recently went to this Hindu temple in Chicago, and a lot of the Hindu temples, they don't really have any philosophy, but this one, it had this chart where it was like an explanation of all of the gods, and it had it said the Trinity, where it had Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma, and then coming from there, it had so many other things. Abhiyamurtha was joking with one guy there. He said, "Where is Sai Baba on this? I don't see him." And then he goes, I don't know. Anyway, but we can see in Srimad Bhagavatam in Atlanta, and it looks like you guys here too are going through this third canto, and we see that Brahma, we have this interaction between Krishna and Brahma, where there's this sarga and then there's this visarga, where Krishna, he creates everything, and then Brahma is sort of acting like the engineer, where he basically takes all the ingredients, all of the different elements, and he amalgamates them together in what we have here as the creation. But we can see through Srimad Bhagavatam that without praying to Krishna, without praying to the Supreme Lord, he was like, I can't do anything. And what's described here in this third canto of Bhagavatam isn't the first creation, or basically the creation after the complete devastation, but it's the recreation after the partial devastation. So Krishna says to Brahma in this Srimad Bhagavatam that, you've already done this before. You've already done this so many times. So I'm giving you the intelligence to do this again. But you should understand, that this is something that you've already done before. You already have this ability, but you should understand it's given to you by me. And after reciting all these prayers, Krishna gives him the ability to recreate this material manifestation. But we can practically see that without the intelligence given to him by Krishna, Lord Brahma, he can't create anything. And that, Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhava, that everything is coming from him. All elements of the material creation, they're all coming from Krishna. Which is why it's very important that we distribute these books very widely and to everybody as much as possible. Especially this Bhagavad Gita and this Srimad Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam is like the same philosophy as Bhagavad Gita, but it goes so much more into depth where you can really understand all these points. Like I was just making this comparison where in Gita, Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhava, that everything's coming from him. And in Bhagavatam, we practically see that without Krishna's hand in this creation, nothing can happen. Without Krishna's sanction, not even a blade of grass can move. So we can understand by ourselves reading these books, applying the teachings to their lives, but and it starts with reading. Books are the basis. It starts with reading these books, but like I was reading before, we can see that one is actually living by these books, by enlightening one another about conversing about Krishna, and who are constantly engaged in devotional service with love. Then we'll see, okay, this person is actually reading these books, and it isn't that when one engages in devotional service, that they stop reading, but they find reading to be actually more and more enlightening, more and more nectar, more and more enjoyable. That you'll read like the same thing where when you were like in like a mode of ignorance, you like first came to Krishna consciousness, and you were like, whoa, this is crazy. When you're actually in that level of Krishna consciousness and you read this, you're like, this is amazing. You can read it over and over and over again, and it's like forever new, forever fresh. And I can't speak of that from my own experience, but we can see great advanced devotees like His Holiness Dhanavir Goswami Maharaj, compiling this whole Garga Samhita, where to write and comment on something like this, you have to be so absorbed. And you can see devotees like this, they relish so much the pastimes of Krishna, where they can just read the pastimes over and over and over again. It's, and you see the level of ecstasy that they're in, and you're like, whatever they're having, I want that. Whatever they have, that's like where I want to be. We can attain that same level, not like in the material world where have the idea we're going to shove everyone out of the way so we can get ahead. But by serving these personalities, we can actually imbibe their qualities. His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, whenever he's asked a how-to question, like, how do I become a better devotee? How do I become free of envy? These very general how-to questions. He always says, I don't know the exact specifics of your situation, but the best advice that I can give is you find a devotee who has these qualities that you're searching for, you serve that devotee, you serve that Vaishnava. And by serving them, you'll gradually imbibe those qualities. So if you want more devotion, if you want to know how to read every day, if you want to know how to chant better rounds, you serve and learn from that devotee who has these qualities. So I spoke briefly on a couple of things. Obviously, we can keep on speaking on these things forever, right? It's described that Ananta Shesha, who has millions and millions and millions of mouths, is describing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. but he can only barely scratch the surface of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So we can, I was telling Mangadari Prabhu that I really like this evening program because you can wind up the day with some Krishna Katha. So yeah, I spoke what I can. Please forgive me if I said anything which was not exactly in line what should be spoken or which was offensive to anybody. But we don't have to stop talking here unless we do, I don't know, at times. So maybe we can have some conversation, questions, or discussion about what we read. You're the boss here, so I don't know exactly what the program is, but if people have anything to say, then there will be better people other than myself say something.
Looks like it's working, but it's just like very quiet. So it's as if it's not working.
I can only answer your question after maybe 3-4 days when he answered me, asked me before, because I was so busy. I told that we traveling from Atlanta to Chicago, 12 hours, and then we distributed books and we went to go to sleep like a very deep night, and then we can sleep only 4 hours. And second day also we distributed books in like a midnight, and again we sleep 4 hours, and again next day we distributed midnight, and again we sleep 4 hours. And I told her, like, I really don't have a time, really. And then now we should go to Kansas City and another 8 hours, and now we know we should go for Colorado another 8 hours, and then we should go to Texas another 17 hours, and then we should go back to Atlanta another 12 hours. And I thought, but these people, you can see what is around in Chicago. They also running away. They're running like on the cars. And they're running completely mean without any meaning, without any reason. And the person can from side can understand what is the difference. You also don't have a time. You also every time is running. But the difference really, like you told about, we working for Krishna. You can see the buildings in Chicago. This is like the hundreds of feet, like the big buildings. If you construct like a small temple like this, you should spend so much money for like to small this. But this is like the buildings is like skyscrapers is completely huge. How much is money? If the people is driving these cars, the thousands of cars is like in 1 minute is going passing away. And this is like a huge amount of money, and this is produced on the karma. And the few people who is playing karatals and mridanga and singing holy name, the chanting holy name on the street, they only only then they can give a chance to nullify all this karma, to burn all this karma. And for this purpose, you no need any like electricity, no need to rent some the place. You just take karatals. You should take mridanga, even without mridanga and karatals. You can chant holy name and you can burn all these things. It is really amazing to compare. You should work somehow. Everyone should work. Like we're speaking every time, joking about exploitation. Like brahmachari, when he living in brahmachari ashram, it's mean the temple commander and another devotees they exploit him, like a Sankirtan leader or the temple commander. He exploit him. Like what is the difference? The boss you exploit you in a job, and the temple commander you're exploited your temple. Is it exploitation? What is this? But the difference, like you burning you became more healthy, spiritually healthy. Otherwise, you again you do this karma, 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 and you can become more sick and sick and sickness, like sickness is increased. But the spiritual master and his representatives, they can give you the system. Like if you everyone have experience to do some gym, if like the person who is qualified, he can teach you like what is the exercises and what is the system of this. But by yourself, you cannot perceive what is good, what is bad. Even you can speculate how much you like. But the person who is completely expert of this, he can give you the solution how you can be very powerful and very strong. And simultaneously, we can see this also. This looks like exploitation, really, but and even even now, even if you're thinking like for future, I will be in spiritual consciousness. Maybe in future it will become. But even now, we can see what is going in our consciousness. It's not like in future you will be spiritual, but now you should like working like donkey. We also working like donkeys. We also like I should working like 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day. It's also if you can see the from the side, it's also like a donkeys, but you can see the difference. It's not like in future you became enlightened and you became like a sadhu and you can understand. Nowadays you can see this the consciousness is completely different.
Mm. Yeah, you know, we're chanting this Hare Krishna mantra every single day, and the meaning of this chanting is actually you're asking, oh Krishna, oh energy of Krishna, please engage me in your service. So, you know, after like chanting 16 rounds every day for like some years, you might be thinking, oh, you know, like I have like so much like service to do, like, you know, like this is like such like a big burden. Like, what am I gonna do? But you know, you've been like praying for this every day for like the last couple of years, like, oh Krishna, please engage me in your service. And actually the perfection isn't to just like sit alone in Vrindavan, maybe like chant some bhajans, but it's to be constantly engaged in devotional service. Every single minute of your day should be like fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, where it's like Amayampuru said, like, you literally don't have time for anything else. You like Maya might be there, like how Maya came to Haridas Thakur, but he was like, yeah, you know, like I would, but I have to chant. I have to chant my rounds. Like I don't have time for this at all. And we can see by this example that if we just constantly just keep on chanting, keep on engaging in devotional service, then just like with Haridas Thakur, then you know Maya also becomes a devotee, and your mind, it gets purified by this chanting over and over and over again. But yeah, we should be engaged like full power in devotional service.
Like this, our spiritual master, he told that some devotees, they chanting this mantra, Hare Krishna, and they chanting, 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 and somebody is coming to them and they told, Prabhu, can you do this service? You don't see? I'm chanting. I'm chanting, my dear Lord, please engage me in service. But you asking me to do some service. Like, you cannot understand. I'm busy. I'm chanting the prayers to ask Krishna to engage me in service. And then you can try to disturb me. What is this now? Prabhu, can you do some service? No, I'm busy. It's mean like it's completely like misunderstanding. This is the conception of Hare Krishna because you want to enjoy. It means you're asking Krishna to engage you in you and service, whatever can give you enjoyment. And if somebody want to like engage you in the service, you are completely disagree.
Anybody else has any questions or points to add?
Is it okay if I make a comment, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Just was reminded of a realization that Pragosh Prabhu shared, the book distributor. He was talking about how Krishna is the time factor, and when we sincerely present ourselves as a servant to the servant of his servant, then as the time factor, he begins to assist that devotee. No longer is he drawing us out with the burden of time, but he's actually bringing what was otherwise inaccessible to accomplish closer to us in the name of service to his devotees, his dear devotees. So, Prabhu, you just reminded me of that. I wanted to share it.
Yeah, Krishna's the supreme controller. So if we sincerely serve that supreme controller, then he can make anything possible, right? And especially those who are distributing books, they can very quickly come to that realization because you see the impossible happening every single day, where you're like, the only way that this could possibly happen is Krishna's direct involvement. Otherwise, there's no chance, not even like a little bit. But it's amazing. Those who are going out and distributing books, they're really able to practically realize that every single day. Where, like I said, you see the impossible happen before your eyes, like every single day, and you're like, this is Krishna's arrangement. So yeah, keep on distributing books. Okay. Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Rupanuga Vedic College ki jai.